Before we get started on today's segment, I just want to say to our brothers and sisters over in the UK, my condolences, rest in peace to the Queen. We here in the US, we have, to a certain degree, a respect for the Queen as we've become great allies with the UK. Though we did fight a war to sever ties, I think over time we've come to have a great respect for our friends over in the United Kingdom. So my condolences, my respect to everybody. Sad day indeed. The Queen has passed. But let's move on to the big news today for those of us here in the United States. Steve Bannon has been taken into custody. Law and Crime reports Bannon and We Build the Wall both charged with money laundering, conspiracy, and scheming to defraud Trump supporters. I don't believe it. Sorry, I don't. And the left, of course, will come out and say, despite all the evidence that they were ripping off and defrauding Trump supporters, you still don't believe it? You are in a cult, you're grifting, blah, blah. Okay, full stop. I will show you some of the facts of the case. And right before the midterms, Steve Bannon was already pardoned for this at the federal level. And now at the state level, New York is going after him. Now, two of the defendants that were not pardoned have, I believe they pleaded guilty and admitted to defrauding people. I still don't believe it. One individual, Timothy Shea, his trial was declared a mistrial. Now, several jurors accused one juror of being biased, but a judge disagreed. So a mistrial was declared and it will move forward. But I think what we are seeing is potentially one screen, two different movies phenomenon, where you can show someone some facts and paint it with a brush that makes them believe something. And then both sides believing something different. But I'll tell you this. They are pulling out all the stops. Joe Biden called MAGA an extremist threat. And then they use the weight of state and federal government to go after their political rivals. So forgive me if I don't believe this is legitimate. Because you're not going to convince me that the people who donated to Steve Bannon and his cohorts to build the wall are upset that Bannon and others were paid for their efforts. What they're arguing is that in the We Build the Wall nonprofit, they said all proceeds go to building the wall. The argument is, well, people believe that every penny sent would go to building the wall, except proceeds has more than one definition. It either means the total transaction or it means the total net transaction after costs. So when you have someone like Steve Bannon saying we're running a nonprofit and the proceeds will go to building the wall, they could mean very simply, we're going to get paid to do work. All the money left over after we get paid goes towards building the wall. Because the idea that a nonprofit can function without paying its own staff and organizers is laughable. Me, having worked for nonprofits, I don't even care if a nonprofit pays their executive director $1 million. I've heard a lot of people say, why is an executive director of a nonprofit receiving $1 million salary? It's simple. Executive directors are CEO level talent. If you want them to run your business, you need to make it competitive. That doesn't mean paying a $10 million salary like some of these other big corporations do, because it is a nonprofit, but it means you're going to pay a lot of money to these people to make the project function. Now, that being said, of course, it could be true that Bannon and his cohorts literally were trying to just rip people off. Whatever. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what my opinion is. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the Democrats. And I think that's where most people will lie. This appears to be a political attack right before an election where Steve Bannon is one of the most prominent voices of the MAGA Republicans is being charged. They already charged him with contempt of Congress. Now we're seeing this. But I tell you this, my friends, it is backfiring. Joe Biden looks bad. Independent voters are pissed off over the constant raids, and it's terrifying. And now in the polls, Biden has a 2-to-1 disapproval rating among independent voters. Republicans need those votes. Now, with that being said, Democrats are gaining in the polls across the board. They're now heavily favored to retain or even expand their hold in the Senate. And it's not looking so good for Republicans in the House. I mean, take a look at Dr. Oz, and I think it's fairly obvious Republicans aren't doing that well. But we'll get into that, because I do think the more they do things like this, the worse off they will get. But we'll see. Abortion apparently is playing a big role in a shift in polling. Before we get started with this big breaking news story, head over to timcast.com, become a member in order to support our work, and Check us out, Timcast on Spotify. You may know that we released a song in the past, just about a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago now, actually. And we reached number 2 on the Billboard digital sales charts. We reached number 16 for all alternative music, number 24, I think, on alternative and rock, 21 on rock. So that's really, really big for us. I'm really grateful. Check out our songs, Only Ever Wanted and Will of the People, 2 songs available on Spotify. We're going to promote that stuff. If you got Spotify, listen to the songs. More songs will be released. We're aiming for a new song every month. So that should be really awesome. We really do appreciate your support. It's just another project we're working on here at Timcast. I know the first songs are from me, but we're going to be signing other artists and expanding our cultural offerings. And I got to say, for our first song, despite all of the hate, it was a resounding success. Seriously, number 16 on the alternative charts, there are many very popular multi-platinum bands that have never reached that high. And that to me was crazy. I did not expect that. I assumed that when we hit, I think, number 16 in alternative, number hot rock and alternative, we hit number 21. I was like, oh, that's probably no big deal. And then I looked at some of these multi-platinum bands that never reached that mark. And I'm like, wow. So thank you all so much. Check out our music. Here's the big story. Bannon and We Build the Wall charged with money laundering, conspiracy, and scheming to defraud their own supporters. The indictment, reported on Wednesday and unsealed for the first time on Thursday, contains similar allegations to the federal case that Bannon dodged through Trump's pardon, with key differences. Federal authorities did not pursue charges against the nonprofit group, even though 2 of its executives now stand convicted of conspiring to commit wire fraud. Spanning 22 pages, the indictment's charges include money laundering, conspiracy, and scheme to defraud. The 501c4 nonprofit is charged under the corporate name We Build the Wall, Inc. As for Bannon's case, the doctrine of separate sovereigns allows state prosecutors to pick up a case similar to one brought by federal authorities. Both the federal and state cases allege that Trump's former chief strategist pocketed $1 million of the $25 million in donor money raised, despite promises that every dime would go towards construction of a U.S.-Mexico border wall. Full stop. Probably, maybe, I don't know. Innocent until proven guilty. Let's see it. Now, a couple of these guys pleaded guilty and they report admitted to it. And if that's the case, well, then so be it. Fine, whatever, charge them. But the timing is suspect either way. Now, look, to those of you on the left who think that people are in a cult or, supporting Trump or whatever, the issue is not that I like Bannon or Trump. The issue is Jussie Smollett, that was a hoax. Michael Brown, hands up, don't shoot, that was a hoax. Covington Catholic, that was a hoax. Kyle Rittenhouse crossed state lines and shot people of color, that was a hoax. So forgive me if I don't believe you right away. Going after Donald Trump, he's got nuclear documents, so screamed the Washington Post. Oh, turns out he didn't. Turns out they were just looking for any documents. He's got classified documents. Well, those were empty folders. They're classified documents for sure. And you know what? If people break the law, so be it. But Trump was the president. He has declassification powers. It's absurd. They're lying, and I don't trust them. Bannon surrendered Thursday morning in Lower Manhattan. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg and New York Attorney General Letitia James will a joint press conference on the charges at 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll have a joint press conference. Copy editor, guys. We'll hold a joint press conference on the charges at 1 p.m. Eastern time. The 2 top prosecutors, so that's passed already. The 2 top prosecutors also joined forces during the prosecution of former Trump Organization Chief Financial Officer Alan Weisselberg, who pleaded guilty last month. Charlie Kirk tweeted that we don't have an over-incarceration problem. We have an under-incarceration problem. No, Charlie's incorrect. 100% wrong. We have a low-hanging fruit and heavily politicized legal system, which means there are people who are in prison who should not be and people who should be who aren't. That's the reality. Violent criminals are getting released in places like New York. They should be. But they were arresting like a salon owner? Nah. I think the overwhelming majority of people should not face prison time. I believe the overwhelming amount of people should face house arrest, and only extreme violent offenders should actually be incarcerated. Extreme. If you're someone who robbed somebody, house arrest. No, I mean it. I know. A lot of conservatives might not want to hear that. But my point is, what we see with the Democrats, what we've been seeing with the politicization of this is that at the start of COVID, they release all the criminals and then started going after small business owners. So no, I don't support this stuff. Going after the Trump Organization chief financial officer, I'll tell you why I bring this up. The reason why so many people are in jail is because they just plead guilty. Because they have lawyers who say you're better off just pleading guilty. Because if you go to trial, you'll face the trial tax. That's right. You see, they'll come to you and say, we got you dead to rights. Here's how we're gonna frame it. And their lawyer goes, yeah, it looks really bad. We've already seen how most people in this country don't believe in innocent until proven guilty. So they say, just plead guilty. So this Trump organization guy probably just says, fine, I'll do whatever you say. Spare me, spare my family. I don't trust it. I don't trust the system. Sorry. Quote, it is a crime to turn a profit by lying to donors. And in New York, you'll be held accountable, Bragg said. As alleged, Steve Bannon acted as an architect of a multi-million-dollar scheme to defraud thousands of donors across the country, including hundreds of Manhattan residents. Each and every day, my office works to ensure that when New Yorkers hand over money, they know where it's going and who it's going to without any smokescreens or false promises. So my question is, did they report the earnings on their 990s? It's a 501c4, which means it can engage in politics and doesn't need to disclose publicly. So maybe that's why it's not relevant. A 990 might just be a 501c3 thing. I could be wrong. James, who primarily handles civil matters, said in a statement that there cannot be one set of rules for everyday people and another for the wealthy and powerful. They love saying that as they let their people get away with everything. Mr. Bannon took advantage of his donors' political views to secure millions of dollars, which he then misappropriated. Mr. Bannon lied to his donors to enrich himself and his friends. We will continue to take on fraudulent behavior in every corner of society, including white-collar criminals, because no one is above the law. They want to mention, though Trump pardoned Bannon, he did not extend the same courtesy to his co-defendants, Brian Kolfage, Andrew Bottolato, and Timothy Shea. Two of the men, Kolfage and Bottolato, admitted to conspiring to defraud donors. Did they? Or did they take a plea deal which required admission? Shea fought the charges at trial, and 11 jurors stood primed to convict him until deliberations were hung by a lone holdout. The indictment disguises Kolfage's name as unindicted co-conspirator number 1. Well, let me show you this from June 7th. Only we build the wall fraud case to go to a jury ends in mistrial after note revealed lone holdout. Now, they accused the lone holdout of being political, but a judge disagreed. Former President Trump pardoned one of Shea's erstwhile co-defendants, Bannon. Kolfage and Bottolato took plea deals. Aha. So did they really do something wrong, or did they just cave to the feds? You know what, man? It's remarkable how people will just be like, I'd rather save my own skin than stand up for what's right. Now, the truth is, maybe these guys really did it. Maybe they knew behind the scenes they were going to be stealing people's money. So be it. My thing is, I just don't understand it, because who would have cared? What Trump supporter is going to be like, I'm giving you this money, but you better not pay the people I support? Weird how that works, right? Which is one reason I don't really trust it. They say, of the $25 million, Bannon pocketed $1 million. Kolfage took $350,000 and bought a yacht, a Range Rover, and an SUV, a golf cart, jewelry, and cosmetic surgery with donors' money, according to the indictment. According to prosecutors, Shea secretly funneled $20,000 monthly, a $20,000 monthly salary to Kolfage through an anonymous LLC used as a shell company in return for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Perhaps. Prove it in court. I'd like to see it. That may be the case. I'm not saying I trust these guys. I don't. But I'm telling you, you got to prove it. Let me show you this. Here's some of the evidence. Hey, for the Build the Wall store, do we want this statement at the top? All proceeds go directly to building the wall, from Tim Shea. Kolfage says, I'll ask. I think since it can't be proven, it's okay. Tim Shea says K. Tim Shea says, I don't want to go to jail. Kolfage says all proceeds or licensing do. Amanda Shea says, LOL, jail. Tim Shea says, don't bend over for the soap. What's proceeds? Let me show you. Merriam-Webster defines proceeds as 1, the total amount brought in. Okay. 2, the net amount received after deduction of any discount or charges. Yeah, it's entirely possible that what they meant was after we get paid all proceeds. Now, I don't know for sure. There's probably more to the case I don't know. People here are accusing this lone juror of being biased. And again, I'm not saying I trust these guys. It's entirely possible they did it. But Bannon getting arrested at the state level after the feds pardoned him just shows that Democrats don't care. They are going nuclear right now. Well, I tell you where this goes. We've already seen this from the post-millennial. Majority of Americans say Biden's anti-MAGA speech was designed to incite conflict. Bravo, Joe Biden. The poll found that 56.8% of likely general election voters said that Biden's speech represents a dangerous escalation in rhetoric and is designed to incite conflict amongst Americans. Okay, and here we are with Rasmussen. Now, I want to point out, polls are biased. I don't know if you can trust any of these one polls. This was Trafalgar Group Convention of States. And here we have Rasmussen. Rasmussen was more accurate, I believe, in 2016 and 2020 than many other pollsters. They say Republican voters overwhelmingly believe President Joe Biden should be impeached, and half of independents agree. That is huge. I think these actions they're taking are freaking people out. Even if Steve Bannon did the things he's accused of, you're freaking people out. It's getting scary, man. Liberals are already fleeing the country, according to many reports. Daily Beast published a story. Immigration lawyers are helping liberals get visas to other countries. I tell you, this game they're playing, it's not working out for them. Take a look at this from The Intelligencer. A smear piece, but it's actually a walkback disguised as a smear piece. I love it. New York Mag says the GOP response to Biden's democracy speech proves his point. Yep, they are dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump. Jonathan Chait. Isn't he the guy who said that Trump may have worked for the Soviets since the 80s, even though the Soviets don't exist anymore? They say last week, President Biden delivered a speech warning that Donald Trump's authoritarian movement posed a threat to American democracy. The Republican response did more to confirm his point than anything he said. Biden's main argument was simple. A wing of the Republican Party aligned with Trump refuses to renounce violence, respect the integrity of elections, or accept the rule of law. Biden argued this faction composes a minority of the party, but has been able to bully the party's officials into compliance. This is a walkback, a full-throated media defense of Joe Biden, because no, he did not say it was just a small wing of the party that controls it. He did say not even a majority. No, he did. But for you to come out repeatedly and say that MAGA Republicans are a threat, that their policies are a threat, and then act like you're not talking about the people who vote them into power, that is disingenuous. They say he's talking about a wing of the party. No MAGA Republican congressperson is twisting the arm of the voter in their district. They're getting support, overwhelming support, and winning elections. This is them running damage control, because the very next day, Biden's like, I'm not talking about Trump supporters. Damage control, because it's bad for them and they know it. Well, I'll tell you this. Shout out to our good friend, Cenk Uygur, who is doing the opposite of damage control and actually hurting the Democrats, I guess. Sure. Cenk says, Biden keeps saying MAGA Republicans are not the majority of the party. I think Democrats in D.C. genuinely believe this because they love Republicans so much, but it's just not true. New poll says 61% of Republicans say they want Trump to run, even if he is an indicted criminal. An indicted criminal? I love that, Cenk. Not a convicted criminal, just an indicted criminal. Meaning, if they indict you, you're a criminal? No, I'm sorry. You're innocent until proven guilty. Okay. But I love this because what Cenk is basically saying is that, no, it's not a minority. Biden keeps saying that it's not true. It's the majority of them. It is 61% of Republicans. And you know what? He's right. Biden is talking about all of them. He's playing dirty games when he does this. No, he's talking about all of them. That's the reality. Well, it's only going to get worse for Republicans. Federal grand jury is probing Trump's PAC's formation fundraising efforts. Sources. The grand jury has subpoenaed several individuals in recent weeks, sources say. ABC News reports a federal grand jury investigating activities leading up to the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, and the push by former President Donald Trump and his allies to overturn the result of the 2020 election have expanded into a probe to seek information about Trump's leadership PAC Save America, sources with direct knowledge tell ABC News. The interest in fundraising arm came to light as part of a grand jury subpoenas seeking documents, records, and testimony from potential witnesses, the sources said. The subpoenas sent to several individuals in recent weeks are specifically seeking to understand the timeline of Save America's formation, the organization's fundraising activities, and how money is both received and spent by the Trump-aligned PAC. How many of you had to slow the video down to hear what I just said? Anyway, the point is, and the reason I kind of sped through that, we get it. They're going after Trump. They're not backing down. They'll keep doing it. And while this works really well for Democrat voters, they're pissing off independents, according to more than one poll. You know, let me show you civics. Which political party do you think is more concerned with the needs of people like you? independent voters. They're split. 28% say Democrats, 27% say Republicans, 41% say neither. I agree, neither. I think there's more Republicans, but the Democrats somehow still manage. Look at this. If you go back to 2017, 50% said neither. There was a period where Republicans were winning. It flickers back and forth, and now it's about even. Let's jump to this poll right here. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Biden is handling his job as president? Well, Biden has seen some tremendous gains. From July 21st to today, he's gone up from 18% to 30%, 12-point bump. Bravo. It's still nearly 2-1. 60% disapprove, 59% disapprove, 30% approve. And let's talk about favorability. Favorable or unfavorable among independent voters, 31% favorable, 62% unfavorable. Nearly 2-1. People are saying they do not favor, they do not approve of Joe Biden, but he's not the Democratic Party. When it comes to independent voters, they're split fairly evenly, but for the most part, independents don't like either. Hence why they're independent. Now, with Joe Biden making these moves and the federal government doing what they're doing, I'm hearing more and more anecdotal data, not that it matters all that much, from people saying they're getting freaked out by this. While that may be the case, I just want to point out it could still be bad news in the long run. While Joe Biden's job approval is way up, it's still only 42.5. But the bigger concern is how this is going to play out. I also want to point out, just as an aside, Christopher Rufo points out that new polling from WPA Intel shows Disney's approval rating has fallen to 51%, and independents, the majority of the plurality, I should say, of independents, only 47% favor favor Disney. Only 47. That means 29% find them unfavorable and the rest don't know. That's crazy. They're losing the majority of independent voters. Now, that's cultural, why I wanted to bring it up, because politics is downstream from culture. But let's talk about this right here. How things are going for Republicans. Michael Malice made a really great point earlier. The Republicans are going after John Fetterman's health, and it's the stupidest play ever. Because he mentions in 2000, I think it was a senator from Missouri, Mel something. He died. And people still voted for him a month later or a couple weeks later. So the governor appointed his wife to serve in his place. 538 says, Democrats are slightly favored to win the Senate. In 70 out of 100 simulations, Democrats hold at 50 seats. With Kamala Harris, that gives them, the tiebreaker. In only 30 scenarios in their simulation, do Republicans actually win with 51 votes? You see, with just 50-50, Democrats have control of the Senate. Republicans need to hold and at least take one seat. And over time, it started to look bad. Right around the time the Roe v. Wade ruling, people pointed out, the Democrats' chances of winning skyrocketed. Because swing states matter. Swing states matter a great deal. Republicans may have taken a great victory with Roe v. Wade's being overturned, but red states are already voting for Republicans. So right now, the average seats controlled by the party is expected to be 51-49. Take a look at this. The best part is, while that may be true, they have this thing showing Democrats winning, 14.3% chance of holding 50 seats. That only shows them as winning because Kamala Harris. Keep that in mind. But 80% of all outcomes range from 53 seats to a Republican to 54 seats Democrat. There's a 5.6% chance Republicans get 53, 8.3 they get 52, 11.3 they get 51, and there's a 14.3 it holds. But then with Democrats tiebreakers, they win. 15.1% chance Democrats actually pick a seat up. In other words, it's looking really good for Democrats. With Pennsylvania and with Georgia, why Dr. Oz? You know what? Whatever. That's just the way it's going to go, I guess. In 538's generic ballot, do voters want Republicans or Democrats? Democrats now lead by 1.2 points. Sad, really. Republicans once enjoyed, according to 538, 2.6. Now, that being said, 538 probably is wrong. Their polls are probably way wrong. The People's Pundit has pointed out that they skew towards, wealthier, higher educated individuals. I believe that's what he said. Don't want to put words in his mouth. But despite the 1.2% gain, historically, this still means Republicans will win. Even over at Real Clear Politics, however, they have Democrats with a 0.4% gain on Republicans. Republicans used to enjoy a 4-point gain. Look at this. In February, 4 points. They couldn't hold it, though. They couldn't hold it. Despite everything that's happening, with independents getting pissed off, Republicans are still down in the polls. Now, I know you may say the polls are skewed in favor of Democrats. That doesn't matter. We're talking about comparing the same poll to itself. So even if 538 is biased, when they were showing a 2.6 point lead for Republicans, that bias is still it still exists today. So perhaps that 1.2 is actually a Republican plus 5. Fine. It means that Republicans had like a plus 8 before. So they are going down. You guys need to steel man your opponents. Republicans need to be operating on the assumption that Democrats are going to be coming out in massive turnout. And thus, you're going to need to muster up everything you can. Trump is needed for this one. He is. When Trump comes out and makes an endorsement, Republicans win. Without Trump, they don't. People didn't turn out in 2018 for Trump. It's unfortunate, but true. Trump's track record, I think 2016 was like 50. No, it was 2018. It was like 50 something. In 2020, it was 70. But now Trump's track record on endorsements is like 99 or like 92%. This means you can expect a red wave. We don't know for sure, man. And that's why everybody needs to go out, knock on as many doors as possible, advocate for people to register to vote, help people register to vote. Registered voters tend to vote for the first time. They have a higher voter turnout rate than average people. And maybe it's because you go to them and say, you got to vote. Then they go vote, their candidate loses, and say, what was the point? So at any rate, knock on doors. Democrats have a major advantage, especially with ranked choice voting. Let me explain to you what happens with ranked choice voting. For one, ranked choice voting is a better system, period. Now, Sarah Palin's upset because she lost. She should have won if they were using first past the post. But then she'd have won with a plurality of votes, not a majority. The combined Republican votes was still the majority. But the people who voted for not Sarah Palin, their second choice was the Democrat. That's the issue. Not completely, though. But hold on. That's the first issue. Moderates will say, I'll take the Republican, but I don't want the MAGA guy, so I'll rather have the moderate Democrat. That's a reality of ranked choice voting. But here's the big problem with ranked choice voting. How many Republicans don't understand the system? And when they get their ballot, they vote for only one person. And then when that one person loses, that's it, no vote. And then Democrats end up winning with a minority. That's right. Democrats only representing 41% of the district of the state. It's the at-large member of Congress. They ended up winning. Now that's a problem because we're trying to avoid minority rule. Ranked choice voting is supposed to give us a more representative majority rule, right? The problem is Democrats go door to door. They say, here's how you vote. Republicans don't. So a Republican gets a mail-in ballot or a Republican shows up and I don't understand what this is. I vote for my guy, I'm done, right? No. You got to vote for your first choice, then your second, then your third, then your fourth. Education plays a big role in this. Democrats are way better at outreach. That means ranked choice voting will always benefit Democrats because Republicans don't know how to do this. And that's not fair. In the end, though, with proper outreach and education, ranked choice voting should ensure the populists win. Seriously. That's what you guys need to be doing is outreach. I'll tell you why. I'll vote for, you know what I would vote for? I want to vote Libertarian. I really do. But I don't want to help Democrats. If we had ranked choice voting at the federal level, I would probably vote for the Libertarian candidate for president, with my second choice being the Republican candidate, not the Democrats. And that means when the Libertarians invariably get 7 to 8%, they don't get enough to carry forward. My vote would then go to Trump, guaranteeing that we don't lose based on our preference. I think it's way better. I think it's way, way better. But you're going to need education. And that's the challenge. Democrats have been advocating for this. Republicans haven't been. That means younger Democrat voters know the system. And that means conservative and Republican voters don't know the system. And that means if they fail to vote in the second position, Democrats win with minority votes. And that is BS. Shouldn't be allowed. But how do you solve for that, man? Education and organization. All these Republicans that are coming out saying ranked choice voting is a scheme, you're wrong. You know, I know Jack Posobiec's been critical of it. Nah, there's no logic behind why it would be a bad system. They argue stuff like the establishment will always win. And it's like, no, man, what they're doing is an ignorance play. They're hoping that by changing the system up, they can confuse people. But the reality is simple. With ranked choice voting and proper education, I am more comfortable voting MAGA. You get a Sarah Palin, right? The problem here is education across the board. But if you get an establishment candidate and people are like, I don't want this guy the establishment guy to win, but if I don't vote for him, man, what am I going to do? With ranked choice voting, you just vote. I think the big problem was they did the special election was an open election. So it's like it was an open primary. That's the trick right there. Putting multiple Republicans on the ballot, that's ridiculous. Here's how it should play. Ranked choice voting. Everybody nominates their people. They enter the fray. Then you should get, who do you want to vote for? Republican candidate, Democrat candidate, Libertarian candidate. Done. And like Green Party and whatever other parties make it. And then you'll say Republican. Second choice is this. Democrats will then say Green Party. Second choice is Democrat or whatever. The problem is when you put two Republicans on the same ballot and then people don't know to vote more than once with ranked choice voting. So I think ranked choice voting is a good thing. But I think it's going to require a massive overhaul in education and organization, something Republicans have already been lacking in. But if you lose in this system, bro, you got to learn to play. Republicans got to learn to build culture, got to learn to play. Got to learn how to organize, got to learn how to go door to door. And I know it's hard, but that's the reality. So we'll see. I think the heavy hand of the Democrats, I think they're doing this because they know the abortion thing is helping them. But I don't think the abortion issue is as strong as they realize. It plays well for Democrats, but it doesn't play as well for independents. It doesn't, but it's going to help them. It will. Education, organization, knocking on doors. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.